Bonjour, David.
Bonjour, mon ami.
Thank you so much for doing this for Webo, for the company, for us. We have all the team watching us today, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. Maybe to start, you could tell us a few words about your entrepreneur career, which is so impressive.
Well, you're being way too kind. It's definitely a pleasure to be here. Such a good friend, and I always enjoy spending time with you and the Webo team. I became an entrepreneur for the same reason a lot of us did. I couldn't get a job. I had come out of college in 1990, which was the last great recession, and it was a very tough time. So I ended up starting a company that became a pretty sizable wireless business, and then have built a total of 5 companies. I sold 3, took 1 public, and then sold that. And now, of course, today I run Zeta Global.
So can you tell us a bit about Zeta, where the idea come from, a bit of the story of the company?
Well, Zeta, like most companies, has been an evolving idea. When my partner and I, John Scully, started Zeta, it's John and I's 3rd company together. But when we started Zeta, back now 11 years ago, the real concept was, how do you make data actionable? As you guys do so exceptionally well at Webo, you index things, you synthesize them down to topic, and you really help your clients to better target their marketing. We really started out on the premise that most companies were collecting mass pools of data, and there was large pools of data out there, but nobody knew how to do anything with it. Now, of course, the business has evolved and pivoted many times over the last 11 years, but we're now 1,400 global employees operating out of 26 offices on 4 continents. We have 758 customers, most of which are in the Fortune 1000. And we are one of the world's largest data sets. In fact, some people say we're the world's 3rd largest data set behind Facebook and Google, with 2.2 billion unique visitors a month hitting our platform.
Well, that's impressive. For those who don't know who John Scully is, he's a former CEO of Apple and PepsiCo, right?
Yes.
John,
I always like to joke, John is a little bit better known than I am.
Not for long.
Well, I don't know about that. They're not making movies about me. They are making movies about him. But he's an amazing guy and has been a great partner.
But that's, by the way, maybe that's a question we can ask right now, because Zeta Global is doing so good and it's a large company. How come we don't know the company? How come we don't know the name?
So some of that is purposeful and some of that is not. I mean, we really built the company in stealth mode for a very long time, and we weren't going out and trying to get attention. Our big premise was, how do we get in front of large companies and use our data and our artificial intelligence to help very large companies create, maintain, and monetize customers at the absolute lowest rate. Now, as John likes to say, we are the largest big data and analytics company in the world that nobody's ever heard of. We're now moving towards changing that as we think about where the business is going and the evolution of the business. Quite frankly, our low profile no longer serves us. Forrester has actually come out with a recent report about us. Gartner has recently put us into the Magic Quadrant report. We are starting to focus on a more outward-facing marketing approach because right now, whenever we go into a sales presentation, almost every one of them starts with Zeta who. And by the end of the presentation, they're like, I can't believe I've never heard of you.
Right.
Which were words uttered by my esteemed friend sitting next to me, right? We talked about the business, you're like, I can't believe I've never heard of you.
Exactly.
Well,
absolutely.
Some of that is my fault. I've been very focused on building the business and very focused on the evolution of the company, probably to the detriment of our marketing.
Well, when going to the US and talking to US clients, the question around deterministic data is a big thing. Can you tell us a bit about that? What's your view on deterministic data, and how deterministic and probabilistic work together?
Well, it's become a very interesting quandary, right? So first of all, what's the definition of deterministic versus probabilistic? And a lot of companies play a lot of games with that. We meet a lot of companies that say they have deterministic data that we would consider probabilistic. at Zeta, as you know, we think of our data cloud as a cell. At the center of the cell is 750 million opted-in identities that we know pretty much everything about them, including demographic, psychographic, behavioral, and transactional. The protons and electrons that roll around it are the 2.2 billion cookies we launch a month through our platforms. One of the big differentiators between us and a lot of the other companies out there is we're able to connect about 600 million of those exact identities with complete PII to the behavioral cookie. But as you know, you've got a big differentiation there between what is the deterministic data and what is the probabilistic data. We believe, we might be right, we might be wrong, we believe that the future of really making these solutions work is going to come down to deterministic data. Probabilistic is good, and it's certainly, if you look at some of the companies today that companies like Webo and us turn our noses up at because they're really purely probabilistic, 5 to 7 years ago, anybody would have given their left arm for the quality of data they have today that we look down on, right? If you think of data, you think of analytics, so much of it is evolving on a daily basis. If you can synthesize down to an exact identity, and you can then use that identity to understand what they're doing, what are the topics, what are the signals, what do those signals mean, and then use them to project out future marketing behaviors, that's mission critical. One of the incredible things that we love about Webo is your guys' ability to really build incredible taxonomies. How do you truly understand who's going to do what next? A lot of companies out there that we see, they're looking in the rear view mirror. They're saying, okay, somebody just did this. Well, if somebody's done that, it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it might if it means what are they going to do next. But, I think every one of us has bought something on the internet, and then for the next month, you get 1,000 ads for what you just bought. Right. That's probabilistic, right? Deterministic is, I know you just bought this, therefore I'm going to show you this because of that, not the exact same thing again and again. And that's, one of the very basic differentials between deterministic and probabilistic, in my opinion.
So to merge and work on this data, you need data management capabilities, you need activation capabilities, you need AI. Can you tell us about those three elements at Zeta?
Well, I'll start with the third first. Artificial intelligence, whether we could over a glass of wine talk about, is it really complex machine learning or is it really artificial intelligence, and has anybody truly created curiosity yet or not? Most of the AI that's used today in the world, we have a big patent portfolio around it, starts with a hypothesis, right? So you're actually telling the algorithm, here's what I think, go prove it out and get smarter. It's substantially better than it was even 12 months ago. And if you look at the ability to do natural language processing, which of course Big Fish is so focused on, and the ability to ingest all this information and synthesize it into topics, for us, what we're doing is we're looking at getting down to the individual. How do we understand exactly, based on that individual's buying patterns, what they're reading, what they're searching, what they're doing? How do we do that? Because our Discuss platform powers 4.2 million publishers, our JavaScript sits on every page those 4.2 million.
Can we just, small time out? So Discuss is a platform, all these comments you see at the bottom of most applications and websites, they come from Discuss, and that's where you get the behavioral data from.
It's where we get a lot of the probabilistic data that we then merge. Yeah. So Discuss, which is the largest commenting platform in the world, helps publishers with their commenting, with surveys, with quizzes, and other data management services. So in exchange for us giving that platform, which is now used by just over 4.2 million publishers, they host our JavaScript on every page they post, and they launch a cookie to everybody who comes into their ecosystem. So our natural language processing platform is ingesting about 11.2 billion pages of content a day through that JavaScript. Now, we talk about whether it's machine learning or AI, no human could process that type of information, right? So ingesting it and then turning it into a topic and an intent is the hard part. And that's really where AI comes in and where we're really, really focused on it.
How do you tackle the question of privacy?
Well, we did just hire a new chief privacy officer, who was the chief privacy officer at Nielsen, is one of the chairmen of the Global Privacy Committee. And it's something we take very seriously. Interestingly enough, even though we're arguably the world's third largest data set, as I think you know, we never sell our data. So it's a very interesting model where we use our data as electricity to power our marketing cloud, which does the activation across either CRM or customer acquisition or retention. We give the data for free to the client as long as they're using our platform. So if they're using our platform, we charge a minimum monthly amount plus a utilization fee every time they utilize it. So the thought process is the more data that feeds in, the more signals are created, the more they use the platform, the more we charge them.
Okay, so maybe we move a bit away from Zeta and more on the ecosystem. Do you think that this privacy evolution is going to build a divide between Europe and the US? Because we feel that we have a very big market on one side, if you count per capita, much bigger than the European market, which is growing a lot. And we have a small market in Europe, which is not growing right now. So if we project in a few years from now, what's your vision?
Well, I don't think of Europe as small. I mean, it's not America, it's not China, but it's certainly in the top 5 global markets. And you know, we could get into the EU and what's happening with that and where it's going and how does that market stay concentrated or not at another time. That's probably not the topic of conversation for this video. The reality is that privacy is not going away. Regulation is not going away. It's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to change. Obviously, GDPR has been one of the biggest global changes to privacy over the last couple of years. There's a new law in California, which is going to change things in the United States. One of the challenges we have in America is if a state passes a law, you really end up having to adhere to that law pretty much everywhere in the country because of the way we operate. And of course, California is a pretty important state. It would be the 5th largest global economy if it sat by itself.
Right.
So it's not like Iowa, which I'm sure love people in Iowa, but it's not the biggest economy in America. Pendulums swing hard. When economies shift, they go from very hot to very cold very fast. It's the same thing with privacy and regulation. There was too little regulation for a very long time around people's identity because governments really weren't able to keep up with the technology. And if you look at Moore's law and how processing power has changed dramatically and the cost of storage's expense plummeting, those two things have really been the single biggest driver in the collection and processing of data. The same report that we can spit out a real-time, customized web page based on an individual coming from another site used to take a week to run 10 years ago. We can now run it in 200 or 300 milliseconds and change every component of a page based on who that individual is. That's Moore's law. That's happening because of processing power. Governments didn't understand what was happening. Now what's happened is because people are feeling their privacy has been invaded, the pendulum is swinging really hard. And we're going to see overregulation, I think, in the short run before the pendulum ultimately settles in the middle. I always argue, and listen, it depends on what side of the coin you're sitting on. Companies like Webo and Zeta, we're helping consumers. Why wouldn't a consumer want to see an offer that's better for them than not, right? Without the marketing ecosystem, the vast majority of content goes away. The content is created by people who are being paid outside of social. In order to pay these people, they need to run marketing, or they need to move to a subscription model. If you were to eliminate those things, the vast majority of content disappears from the internet. Now, I don't think anybody wants that. So it's just a question of how do you get to a happy medium? Once again, back to Zeta, we use an intent-based score. We say that this person is likely to do this, therefore we're going to send them this offer on behalf of that client. We never tell the client who the end user is, only that they meet these exact attributes. So we're protecting the client's privacy by doing that. Mm-hmm. There are other companies that collect massive pools of data, they synthesize them, and then they sell them to third parties, including the names. I think they're going to have problems in the years to come because I don't think people want their data floating around like that.
So what do you consider as the major challenges that you're facing and the things that you have to solve in order to grow Zeta to the next step?
Well, that's a complex question. I mean, I think that anytime you build a business, as you know, you've been such a successful entrepreneur from your first businesses in import-export in Russia, all the way to today running such an amazing company, 250 global employees operating on multiple continents. It's really continents, I should say. It's really cool. Execution. Right? I mean, the first and most important thing is, can you execute? Can you deliver for your clients? Can you continue to evolve? Can you continue to get better? One of the challenges I think we have at Zeta is we've tried for the first time to build some strategic partnerships with some very large companies. And getting involved with the politics there and how that works and how that operates has been an interesting challenge for me personally to navigate and work through, and we're continuing to try to do that. So as I sit here today, it's probably one of the biggest challenges I'm focused on how do we continue to grow Zeta, is start to integrate into larger ecosystems and larger companies and navigate the political ecosystems that operate inside of that.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much, David. I'm sure that we learned a lot and that the team learned a lot about your company, about yourself, and about the major challenges, because we're facing the same challenges that you are facing. Thanks a lot for spending some time with us.
It's my pleasure, Alain. Thank you very much.